Welcome to my channel. I'm Elizabeth Liz Machette, and today's Cosmic Connection Relationship Astrology with Robert Passetti, Madam Simon, Justin Crockett Elsie, and myself. Welcome, team. How y'all doing?
Good to see you.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to have you on again. It's been a little while since we've gotten together, but we're going to try to get this more on a regular basis every 2 or 3 months. So, Madam Simon is an archetypal astrologer, tarot reader, and visionary artist, and her website is iconalchemy.com. I'm a consulting astrologer, author, and tarot reader, and my website is alightpath.com. Justin Crockett Elsie is an archetypal and Jyotish astrologer, teacher, author, and Buddhist, and the best way to reach him is his email address at justin.elsie@gmail.com. And Robert Passetti is a consulting astrologer, vibrational and psychological techniques, and his website is deepearthastrology.com. So, Robert, I'm going to let you share the quote since you found it for us this time.
Yeah, the quote is, "Because I knew you, I have been changed for good." And this is really kind of like the tag quote for Wicked, the musical, which has been recently turned into a film. And the two witches, so to say, Elphaba and Glinda, are played by two actors, Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. And that is who we are talking about, because there has been a lot of very interesting relationship intensities that have gone on with them. Partially part of the press junket, partially, because it really happened in there. But there is so much interesting synastry and synergy between the actors and the roles that they played.
Thank you. And Justin, I'm going to let you start off with the houses and relationships charts.
So when we look at astrology, each of the houses does relate to some kind of relationship in our lives. So the first house generally relates to the relationship with self, or how people see us as well. The second house we can look at as the family as a unit, and our relationship to our resources. Third house is of course, our siblings or cousins. Fourth house is parents or family lineage, and anybody really within the family can show up in the fourth house. Fifth house is representative of our children and our children's lives, and of course also our relationship with our own childhood. Sixth house is our relationship with our coworkers, our employees, and also a relationship with our own health. Seventh house is for love or intimacy or close friendships. Also represents kind of what's going on in the partners family as well, relationships there. Eighth house is shared resources with our partners, our relationship with also past life stuff, and people that could come in from past lives relationships. Ninth house is grandparents, also our relationship with our teachers and our spiritual teachers. And then, of course, 10th house is also another, again, parental house and family lineage, because it's opposite the fourth house in the chart. Also, a relationship with people in our career. And 11th house is extended family. Also, a relationship with our community. This is a big one. So this could be all variety of relationships within community can show up here, even friends or whoever else. And then the 12th house is our hidden relationships. And so that's an interesting one to always look at, especially if you have a planet that deals like Eros in there. Then that's even a higher indicator of something about hidden relationships. So it can represent how we hide certain relationships in our life.
Anybody else want to add anything to any of those? Okay, Simon, can you lead us through the asteroids and centaurs, etc.?
So, Juno relates to our covenant partnerships, those that we have like a commitment to, not just any relationship. Pallas Athena relates to strategy, wisdom, planning. Ceres is nurturing and nourishing, but can also show grief or loss. Vesta is goddess of hearth and home, but also is that sacred spark, that sacred flame within us, what we focus on when we're not experiencing the kind of drive and focus of Mars. Okay. Eros, love, but also vitality. Okay. Psyche can be the soul bond between people. I actually look very much at psyche as being how the soul knows itself through the experience of love. Idea relates to health, but specifically there we see with IEA there's both what keeps us healthy and what may impact our health. So what might take away our health if we're not paying attention. Centaurs, we see Nessus relates to trauma and abuse, but again can also show us where we become empowered through working through that. Okay. Pholus can be a sudden turning point, also can be sort of hidden gifts in terms of our talents. Chiron, known as the wounded healer, but also as a teacher. Other points that we see here, we've got the vertex and the anti-vertex, which are opposite each other. There's the vertex is auspicious connections. The anti-vertex can be challenging connections. The part of fortune is the element of chance, neither good fortune nor bad fortune specifically, just chance, fortune. Okay. And we use the natural position of Lilith here. Lilith is what is untamed and challenging to social mores, can very much relate to our integrity and our willingness to hold the line and, stand up for ourselves.
Justin, do you want to do the planets?
Sure. So the planets we looked at, of course, we look at all the planets here. The sun represents the self, the moon, our emotional nature, of course, Mercury, communications and our thinking. Venus is our desires and affections. And interestingly, in relationships can relate to how we see affection and what we desire our affection to be like, depending upon what sign it is in or how we see affection. Mars is how we take action. And Jupiter is what how we grow as souls. Saturn represents how we view work and also our staying power. Uranus represents skill sets also, and also how we deal with change and what we look for in change. Neptune is our collective and how our relationship is in the collective, and how that may play out. And then Pluto, of course, is really what we have to transform in our life, and how we have to have some non-attachment with what goes on in our world.
Thank you. And Robert looked up the information on our two actors, so I'll let you go and tell us about Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo. Is that how you say her name?
Erivo.
Erivo. Thank you.
Ariana Grande, American actress, from singer, songwriter from Florida. She was a child star. Around the age of 13, she started, presenting on the Nickelodeon, releasing some music. She has an amazing vocal range, very much a chameleon as far as her abilities there. She's able to emulate many other singers, very talented, multiple Grammy Awards, and she has a massive fan base. She's very popular. And she stepped into the world of musical film with her role as Glinda. Bringing her, vocal talents to this character that was originally conceived in the Broadway musical. And then we have Cynthia Erivo. She is a British actress, very powerful, commanding performances is really what she's known for. She was in The Color Purple, where she won the Tony, and she also portrayed Harriet Tubman in Harriet. She takes the kind of, the challenging villain role within Wicked, but turns out things are more complicated than they seem. Very misunderstood. And this really showcased, both her emotional depth and the vocal range that she has. And like I said in the beginning, there is really a very interesting overlap between both the actors and the roles that they play.
Justin, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, he's spot on about both of them, and I would just add that, interestingly enough, Ariana Grande is taken on. You can see a little bit more of a political activist personality in her role. She tends to take up social causes, and she's been very prominent with social causes. And then, and she's got a 4-octave range, by the way. And then on a vegan, and then of course Cynthia Erivo, interestingly enough, takes up some really. She tends towards archetypal roles in her stuff, and it's based on her astrology. But she's also vegan, and yeah, so that's what I would add to that.
Simon, do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay, and Robert, you can tell us about Wicked.
Yeah, it's the story of these two iconic witches. This is really a play off of The Wizard of Oz, and this was originally a book that turned into a musical that has turned into a film. And it's really about these two witches, Glinda and Elphaba. Elphaba, if you're not familiar with Wicked, is the Wicked Witch of the West, whose relationship evolves from unlikely roommates, in their witch training school, into one of deep emotional complexity and impact. So Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West, misunderstood, green-skinned outsider. And then you have Glinda, who is this popular, privileged, young woman who began their journey at odds. And then, through this journey, this very Capricornian journey of ambition and struggle, built a close bond together. Their lives diverged politically, through power, influence, and love relationships. And that becomes part of the story. And that tension between them, between love, loyalty, and the forces that push them apart. And these were great performances. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that's seen these films and thought, wow, they could have done a better job. They were wonderful, both of them. And you could see that they were pushing each other. And, that is very apparent in their charts, that kind of push to excellence, that commitment to taking things to the highest level. And it's an amazing, amazing movie. And I hope everybody would see it.
Anybody else want to add anything? So we're going to get into Ariana's chart first. She was born June 26 in 1993 at 9:16 p.m. in Boca Raton, Florida. So who wants to start? Robert?
Well, we were talking about just, Capricorn, and we're going to probably end up talking about Capricorn quite a bit. And, she has her ascendant. This is an accurate birth time, by the way. Right at the generational conjunction of Uranus and Neptune there. These are people that this was a generation that wants to see change. And they feel like the collective can change. And she, being part of the ascendant and being in that real space, is, she is somebody that represents the collective consciousness of her generation in a lot of ways. She's very much a maverick. One of the things that we've done with the research in vibrational astrology is seen with Capricorn is that they have a very strong witness consciousness. We often talk about how Capricorns are strong with business, they're ambitious, they know how to strive. And that is where they're able to really see things through people's eyes. They're able to kind of emulate what people's needs are from a physical standpoint. Keep in mind, this is the opposite of Cancer, nourishment of the emotional needs. Whereas Capricorn is much more pragmatic in what the actual physical needs are of people. And, this is sensual, but it's also presented in her voice. Like I said, she is somebody who can emulate a lot of different voices and a lot of different pop stars. If you look at any of the videos of her from any of the late night talk shows, they often will just list out a singer, do her song. And she sounds exactly like the singer, so she is very much in that role of kind of like the maverick connected to the collective consciousness, representing a generation in her personality.
Yeah, I would agree, and a couple of things I might point out. So, I did look at her Jyotish chart, and to just to kind of see what dasha she was born on, or planetary period, and she's born on a moon Rahu, or moon north node dasha, and so this really highlights for her the moon Jupiter conjunction in the astrology chart here, which means that she has a really strong intensity to her personality with this. Of course, with Jupiter, expanding that moon energy, she has a really strong emotional intensity and creativity because of that. One caution, she'd have to be careful of anxiety and how that plays out. But I definitely agree. She has a really strong competitive thing. And something that I've noticed in artist charts as well, when uh, the Neptune on one of the angles is very indicative of artists.
Mhm.
And she's got that, Uranus, Neptune, same degree as the ascendant, trining Venus and at 20 degrees. And this highlights what you're talking about there, Robert, about her relationship to the collective, about issues, and what I was talking about before socially. She has a really strong sense of values because of this, with Venus trining that Neptune on the ascendant. But yeah, that's all I was going to point out, and so I'll just stop right there.
Simon, go ahead.
Well, the thing that really jumps out at me is that first quarter square of the moon to the sun, and that moon being conjoining Jupiter, and the fact that they are in Libra. And so there is big feeling, but it is socially oriented, it is relationship oriented, and it is concerned with balance and with harmony. Okay. And it's always going to be trying to get back to balance and harmony when things seem out of balance. But because it's in that first quarter square, of course, there is that challenge to her son's consciousness, right? Which is work oriented, since it's in the sixth house, work and health oriented. And that sun is ruled by the moon. Right. So we're getting that amplification of feeling right there. The other thing that really pops out at me is Psyche right up there at the midheaven. I find that really interesting. It's Psyche in Scorpio, and it's in a square to Eros in the first house. So there is this kind of sense of soulfulness, and concern again with matters of love. But both of those are retrograde, so it's going to be more internalized. And Psyche, of course, being in Scorpio tends to hide things, right? But it's right up there up top. So there's hidden soulfulness, and at the same time can't hide the soulfulness.
Yeah. That 9th, 10th house is really interesting for her, and I think it says a lot, because you see that Jupiter, Moon, and Libra conjunction in the character of Glinda. It's a story about kind of higher education. And she definitely plays the Libran, party-going, playful, but, beautiful role, socially constructed. And that is an interesting place for her. And when we go to the MC, we see, the Nessus Folus, the Nessus Psyche conjunction there. I could see her being a trauma bonder, especially when it has to do with growing up being a star. And we often see in her personal relationships that she has, romantically with men, they're often related to her work. The ones that actually, the relationships that lasted longest for her were people that she met, on a set somewhere. In fact, the last relationship that we had that she had was with one of the actors from Wicked. I think that's interesting. And Justin, I'm going to ask you, what do you think that would represent, how would that manifest with that Chiron in Leo in the 7th house?
Well, that's interesting. You would say that she has this. Again, I'm going to go back to the moon Jupiter here because that's in Libra. It's about relationship, and in her Jyotish chart, there's this theme of guardianship. So again, she has a very strong social consciousness, as we've all three touched on here, and I think, and there's a little bit of this really creative Leo, spontaneous mind. I mean, it's like really, oh yeah, let's do this. And so I think there's, she's really, I think you said she's dated a lot of people she's been in shows with, of course, because she's got all that stuff in Leo in the 7th house, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's more likely to have relationships with people that creative relationships she's with. But I think there is, and she likes this thrill of new discovery and joy of beginnings of new relationships, if we look at the Sabian symbols. But I think she's really having to, again, evaluate when we look at a couple of the Sabian symbols, she's learning about what values are most important. And this kind of goes over into relationship life, that she can't help everybody, and she's learning about what's most valuable in life. And I think that's what really kind of jumps out to that with me. One little really interesting thing, since she was in this movie that deals with magic, and I'm going to also bring in Cynthia here a little bit too. There's an indicator in both of their charts, in the Jyotish chart, that they have some skill set with magic. There's a thing that's an indicator in magician's charts that they both have, and so I thought it was kind of funny that they're both play this role in a movie that deals with magic. So I thought that was kind of interesting to point out there. But I think back to your point, I think she's learning really about what's most valuable with relationships.
Yeah,
I'd like to touch on that Chiron for a moment. Because you may note that it is in a T-square with Venus, who rules her moon and Jupiter, and is, of course, the planet most associated with love and relationships, and then Pluto out there in her 10th house. And so we literally see here the power of love when we're looking at Venus Pluto, but there is this challenge here with regard to that T-square with Chiron in the 7th. And when Chiron is in Leo, we may feel some challenges around how do we show up, because Leo is ruled by the sun and governs literally how are we seen, how do we show up, how do we shine, and how are we expressing ourselves creatively. Also with Chiron in Leo, we can see inner child wounding, right? That's a fairly prominent way of viewing that. And so I'm inclined to see that Chiron in the 7th as being this matter of, where she's going to learn a lot from relationships, especially with Mercury, that planet that is associated with learning and thinking, okay, right there in the 7th, so close to the descendant. But at the same time, there is that question of how am I showing up in relationship, and also, am I being seen in relationship? Right? Or do I disappear within
she holds a lot internally, and that's very evident if you look at the amount of planets that she has in retrograde, in the natal chart. Like, she is definitely somebody who's holding on to a lot internally, and it needs a way to express itself. And I think that something like this, where, being a star and having that moon Jupiter, which are, is just such a wonderfully outward, and very direct. Probably the most direct thing in her chart is she's able to take all of that internal kind of heavy energy that she really has in her chart and focus it into performance.
Right.
With a Capricorn ascendant, that is going to lead to somebody who's very ambitious and a very hard worker.
And so you're talking about what I was talking about before, which is that intensity and the personality that creates an underlying anxiety, because she's born in that Moon Dasha period. So she has this really strong, competitive, or ambitious aspect in the personality. It creates a little bit of perfection as well, with the Jupiter Moon conjunction there. And so, but she, back to what I was talking about, the value. And because Venus is about values, and that squares that Chiron in the 7th house. So there could be issues where she is not valued in relationships, and or not seen in relationships, as somebody else pointed out there. So I think that's ultimately she's learning about that. One thing that got to me also here was interesting is that her Mercury is quincunx Saturn. And so I think there's a lot going on there with she's trying to bring some sense of balance between that Saturn at 0 degrees Pisces and the Mercury that's at 27 degrees Cancer there. There seems to be some need of balance that's happening.
Yeah. And listen, we're talking about the 4th, 10th house axis when we're talking about that opposition between Venus and Pluto. We're talking somebody who's a very intense worker. But in terms of love, she probably wants to just sit around in sweatpants with their partner and just enjoy comfort. And, we see that in some of the men that she's chosen to partner with. And we also see that in the 1st house with that Eros there in Aquarius. She's chosen some non-traditionally attractive partners in her life. She's attracted to kind of like the hot freak in a way, like we've seen that time and time again. And while that is not in G-square position, it certainly is close. And I could see that kind of being the issue is like, she has this desire to just, be somebody who is a good partner, eating popcorn on the couch with the, in the home, but at the same time, she's got this plutonic drive in the 10th house to go to the highest highs and the lowest lows to achieve her ambitions.
Yeah. Eros in Aquarius, I tend to find is a personality. They like unusual people. So, or the person that's, doesn't fit in. So that's kind of what you're talking about. She'll go towards the person that's probably not what everybody would see as the ideal partner. She's going to go for those people that don't fit or the unusual or more eccentric type.
There have been a couple of times where she's been in a new partnership and people have been like, really? Him? Like that's been like a recurring theme. So I believe that.
Well, I think that's emphasized even more because that Eros is opposing Juno pretty tightly. And that Juno in Leo, she's going to be attracted to people who are unafraid to express themselves, who actually have some of the medicine for her chironic wounding. Okay. That they can be themselves, and in turn, she can have a sense of what it is to be herself. Also,
Go ahead.
Oh, also, I was going to say, we shouldn't underestimate the power of that Venus. It is domiciled, right? That's not a weak Venus. That is a Venus who is secure and comfortable in her own space. So she probably does feel like she has an easier time being herself within her own space. Especially since that Venus rules that moon, and that's going to be what are her knee-jerk reactions, right?
Simon, do you think that she could be a motherer in relationships with the Sun in Cancer and the Venus in Taurus? Very much a caretaker?
That could very well be. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
This
her
could
her
be
that 5 degrees sun though in Cancer in the Sabian symbol and Sabian symbols that it's the Sabian symbol that deals with the game birds feathering their nests, and it has a materialistic Capricorn feel in her Jyotisha chart, so she understands how to take care of somebody with that.
Yeah.
Um, the one thing that jumped out to me really quickly before I forget this is I'm reminded that Aquarius and Leo is an individualistic sign, and so because that individualistic sign of Leo is take ruling, or it's taking care of Hygeia and Chiron there. Again, I think defining of self, she needs some individuality and some really some independence in relationship, and really it's important for her to define herself. So this is where I think, even though it's not Aries, it's Leo, there still is something where she may get so much into taking care of a partner that and caring for them and wanting to help them, that she maybe loses herself. And definitely needs to be some good boundaries, and she needs her individuality expressed, her own individual creative personality, self-expression within relationship.
And that's, you see that within the ruler of the chart, which is Saturn at 0 degrees Pisces. I mean, she views discipline and responsibility as a spiritual process. And I would also see that as being somebody who, she can let a lot of things go, but when it comes to creativity, she's really, that is where her focus of discipline is. So that really fits well within what you were just saying, both of you.
also that caregiver quality that you mentioned. It should be noted that Ceres is trine that Chiron. So I do think that emphasizes, again, that sense of the caregiver, but also the caregiver who may struggle with regard to staying themselves while being in that kind of a role. And it should be noted that Ceres there is ruled by Mars, right? And Ceres is in Aries. So caregiving does require that you stand up and be yourself here. Mm-hmm. Okay. But note where that Mars is. That Mars in the 8th house, which can show us some, psychological struggles, right? Our taboo issues and the things that we are, maybe afraid to look at. That Mars is in Virgo. So we, again, get some of that resonance of perfectionism that Justin was mentioning before. And it is opposing Saturn, ruler of the ascendant. And so there is where that powerful drive is, because you've got the two malefics, staring each other down.
You're spot on with that. That is strong drive. Yeah.
All right. Do we want to go on to Cynthia?
Absolutely. Cynthia was born on January 8th, 1987, and we're using a sunrise chart because we couldn't find her birth time at 8:11 a.m. in Stockwell, London, UK. So
she knows her birth time. She's just not sharing it, because she has actually made quotes about astrology and the astrology that her and Ariana share, saying that they both exist in a place of Capricornian beauty. And obviously that's in the chart. What do you think about what's going on with that Capricorn, Justin?
Well, I was going to mention, so kind of on the themes of what Dasha, she's born on her planetary period, because that kind of comes out in the personality, where we saw the moon really prominent with the moon and ambition with Ariana. With Cynthia, she's born on a Ketu or South Node Saturn. So here in this personality, we have a more serious personality. She can be a little bit more serious, and there's a thing about responsibility with her that comes through, that plays out. So she's and what I was saying before, she tends to take on more archetypal roles. This is due to her midheaven, where she has this sort of need to. This is where the eccentricity and sense of separateness comes with her. She really stands out. being different. And so, I mean, but you see in here in this personality, a more serious personality. And I'll let people take it from there. There's a couple of things I wanted to say, but I'll wait.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiron in Gemini in the fifth house, it's I can see a wound of not feeling like you're being heard or understood. And this is something that she's talked about in interviews. She went. There's a big difference in the education path to get there. Whereas Ariana went through the kind of like the Florida pageant scene to get to Disney. Cynthia Erivo went to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London.
So I want to point out something really quickly about that. She actually was getting a music psychology degree before she went into the acting aspect. And one of the things that really shows up in a theme with her saving symbols, which I think she may come out later on in life with this, is teaching. Because what happens every 7 years is Chiron conjuncts Hygeia every 7 years. And she's born with that Chiron Hygeia conjunction, which is like the healer. So you're talking about education there. She actually has a thing with that in Gemini of being able to help people that aren't heard, or speech therapist or voice coach. I've seen this because it's in Gemini. And of course, even though this is a sunrise chart, it still has some validity. Mercury being right there into the 12th house kind of speaks to what you're saying is not heard.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really what I was getting at, especially, Capricorn sun, again, it's somebody who's able to have witness consciousness. But again, she takes more of an archetypal approach to everything that she does. She also wants to represent people who she feels she has had a shared lived experience with. That is where you see her most prominent roles coming through with the work that she's done on Broadway and also with Elphaba. There is this kind of resistance to conformity that exists, while also being somebody who can really speak on behalf of a voice that is not heard. And that really, I think, ties together that strong work ethic that a Capricorn is going to have with that wound of not being heard that we see with the hidden voice in the 12th house with Mercury, and also the Chiron in Gemini. I often find, a Capricorn Mercury to be very authoritative when it speaks. And I think that she does carry that kind of gravitas with her. There is a polish, there is a reverence, but it's not what we're used to. It's kind of her own thing. It's her own healing process that she's accessed. And I find that's what's so fascinating about her and why I feel like she was so successful at portraying this character.
Simon, what would you like to share?
Oh, so a few things. Starting with that Capricorn Mercury, which is tightly conjunct Juno in Capricorn. This is a woman who takes her promises seriously. Okay. And I also find that very interesting, that combination, because of course Mercury rules that Gemini Chiron, right? That Mercury is in a minor grand trine with what do you call them? Eros in Pisces and Pallas in Scorpio. Okay. So this also says to me, this is a person who bides her time and plans when it comes to what stirs up, her deep vitality, but also with regard to relationships. Okay. And that Eros is getting pumped up by a domiciled Jupiter in Pisces there. Okay. Mercury then, is in a very interesting position for being the ruler of that Chiron. For, for dealing with that sense of woundedness surrounding potentially being misunderstood, because that Mercury is so serious, because that Mercury is so concerned with with keeping promises, with saying what she means. And that Mercury is right there with the sun. Now, the sun is in a really interesting position because it is, along with that Mercury and Juno, square the nodes.
Mm-hmm.
So we're potentially looking at, for those who are inclined to look at, past life stuff, we would say that this would be, concern with how one is being heard, with how one is speaking, and the seriousness of one's words is an area of concern that's coming from a past life. And that sun there, then how are you seen at your core? What is this core serious person who is having to show up in a way that, takes one off the beaten path, quite literally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that North Node is conjoined by Eris. And Eris is a disruptor. And Eris can be a fierce advocate for those who are underdogs or who are oppressed or who are misunderstood. And so I find that really interesting in terms of that very much fits with that Chiron in Gemini that wants very much to be certain that it's saying what it needs to and that it's being understood, but it's because there's so much writing on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
But
absolutely.
and I might point out, I know somebody already pointed this out, but the reason Mercury is quincunx her Chiron.
Mm-hmm.
There's an imbalance. There's an imbalance between. So she's always trying to, find some sense of balance and being heard. And so that's something she's got to work with, is that Mercury Chiron thing. I also point out, I looked at the Sabians for all the Sagittarius in her chart, and I love that she has Venus at 0 degrees Sagittarius, and then of course she's got Ceres there, and she's got Saturn and Uranus, and I find that when people have Uranus in Sagittarius, they have a gift for lyrics and lyricism or poetry. And she has a very philosopher. This is something that's hidden in all the Sagittarius. There's a very philosopher type of thinking here. And when you look at the Sabian symbols, that comes out. So I think that informs that Capricorn and a lot of where her responsibility is. She has this ability to see the bigger picture. With all of that Sagittarius there.
I could absolutely see her being somebody who travels around a lot of circles but doesn't have a lot of very close friends and people that she really puts on her level. That's not insulting her in any way. It's just, especially when, that Chiron is sextile her North Node. And that is a journey to really individuation, a lot with Aries, like, I am. Is the ultimate goal. And, I think with the Capricorn sun, with that Chiron in Gemini, with that North Node in Aries, when she meets somebody at her level, that's going to be a very deeply spiritual relationship, especially when we're considering that Eros Jupiter conjunction in Pisces there. When she finds somebody that she can really connect to, who can connect to her on that spiritual level, it's going to be a big, expansive relationship. It's going to be big emotions. There's going to be a closeness there. And, Saturn in Sagittarius can be challenging. It's always looking for new meaning. And, with that, you're going to be kind of the centaur moving from place to place. So finding someone that can really bring you into your center, and we'll get to this in a second when we talk about the synastry, but, we are talking about a sun ascendant shared relationship between these two. And that is always potent out of the gate.
Absolutely. Anything else any of you would like to share?
I find it interesting that there are so many planets in the middle of each sign.
Mhm.
Okay. So there are lots of connections being made within this chart, but there, you get things like, yes, there's that T square being formed by the nodes with the Sun and Mercury and Juno, but you also get, the lovely trine between Pallas and Eros and Jupiter. Note that Eros is opposite Psyche, so they are very much connected in this chart. Also, Saturn is opposite Chiron, and I think that very much speaks to a hard upbringing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that gets to both. She had a very hard upbringing, as a matter of fact, just like Ariana did. They both come from broken homes.
Mhm.
And as a matter of fact, Cynthia here still has her father abandoned them when they were young. So she she's dedicated some things to her mother. She has got a very close relationship with her mother, but she's disengaged from her father.
And we do have to point out again that this is a sunrise chart. This is not
Right.
this is not the correct ascendant. I mean, if I was a gambling man, I would put a little Scorpio ascendant there.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, but yeah. You want to move on to
But
this ministry?
yeah, one of the things before we get to the synastry, talking about that Eros and take it from somebody who has Jupiter and Pisces, this means that she's going to have some. She needs a partner that's compassionate.
Mhm.
When we talk about love, she needs somebody that's compassionate, and she has this need to kind of fantasize about things, and she needs a career where she's able to express deep compassion with Jupiter and Pisces there. And it's interesting, the archetype, I mean the Sabian symbol for that, Mars at 29 degrees Pisces, is the concept of, because it's that last degree in the thing, it's about archetypalization.
Mhm.
And living that archetype. And so I think this is why you'll continue to see her in very prominent roles, very individualistic roles, being sort of an exemplar or archetype.
Thank
Yeah.
you. So we're going to go on to the synastry chart, and we have Ariana in the inner wheel and Cynthia on the outer wheel. Go ahead.
So I'd like to start really quickly
Yeah,
because
go
I've
for
been
it.
chomping at the bit with this one. One of the things that I think is most important in the synastry is they both have their Venuses both trine each other's Mercury,
Mhm.
meaning like Ariana's Mercury trines Cynthia's Venus, and Cynthia's Venus trines Ariana's Mercury. And this really sets up in relationship astrology a really good, great, harmonious relationship. I mean, so it means that they value each other's intellectual input, and they're going to have a good, charming, affectionate relationship with that. Basically their Venuses and Mercuries all interact. So that's the big thing that jumped out to me about the chart.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the Pluto on the Psyche at the top of the chart, and it's just an intense relationship at a deep soul level that they probably couldn't even really manifest words for at first. It's pre-verbal, especially in Scorpio. It's deep. It resonates down to the core of them both. And Cynthia is a little bit older than Ariana, about 7 years, 6 years. And I could definitely see Ariana looking up to Cynthia in a way as kind of being a role model in a lot of ways. But I think that works both ways in this relationship, which is why it works so well there. I mean, when we look at the what's going on with the ascendant there, I mean, there is definitely that hard work ethic going on with both of them, and where it manifests is in the career. And it's just, there's just so much shared. I would go past values and to say ways that they see the world from a greater perspective, and their lived experience are very much simpatico. What do you guys think?
Go ahead,
I think,
Simon.
I think the relationship can be very empowering to them, not just like having that camaraderie, but just Ariana's sun trines that Pluto Psyche combination right off the bat. That is super empowering, right? It, among other things, Sun Pluto trines can give one the sense that one can go on through challenges, that one has reserves of energy one didn't know one had. When you've got that in synastry, then this other person is helping you come back to life after each hardship, right? They're helping you to regenerate. That's super potent, especially if you like Ariana, have that that Chiron in Leo. That's like, questioning, how am I showing up? Am I being seen? Do I exist? And here is somebody who on this very deep level, brings you back to life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think they have this effortless understanding of one another. That's how I would say it is.
That's really what I was going for, Justin. That's what I was going for.
Effortless understanding. But it's interesting when we look at their Mars, because their Mars are in opposing signs, but it's actually because they're at at both ends of the spectrum of the degrees, their Mars is quincunxed. So this can mean that they're not alike in how, and they're opposites in how they may take action or what their direction and drive is. So I think that there's some level that's what they have to work with. That could, I don't think it's a challenge for them. I think that they'll figure it out, but they definitely have to be sensitive to how the other person takes action or wants to take the drive with something here. So they have to find some sense of balance, since those are inconjunct or quincunxed. What do you all think about that?
I absolutely agree. That that's I think that's the name of the game. And then I also, going back to just like how they teach each other, you see that Saturn in Sag with Cynthia right on top, in the midpoint there for the North Node of Ariana there with the series. I think that there is kind of like this like discipline nurturing thing, going for where Ariana wants to end up. But then, regardless of what house it is, that Mercury for Cynthia is combust as combust can be, and being there with that generationally represented conjunction between Neptune and Uranus, I think that Ariana almost taught her like, okay, you're going to teach me things that, being a little bit older, and I'm going to teach you how to reach out to the people in my generation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see that with the Chiron on the South Node and the Saturn on the North Node. Definitely. I think there's a little bit more of a innocent optimism with Ariana, and a little bit more of the serious parental thing that may come through with Cynthia, but they definitely can. I think there's a simpatico there. Yeah.
Well, there was also rumors that they were lovers. Does any, like that was kind of like it was too intense of a relationship for people where they were uncomfortable with, they were both, kind of, we get back to that. Like we used the word trauma bond in Ariana chart before. I mean, look at where Cynthia's Nessus is, right on top, right near the Mars of Ariana there, very much related to kind of, being very conservative in a lot of ways in Virgo, that Mars energy is. Nessus there being kind of a trauma wound there. I just, I think that there is this kind of, I found somebody that really fits the puzzle pieces together, just as you were talking about, Justin. But at the same time, I don't necessarily know if they would always handle that in the healthiest way.
Well, it's interesting you should say that. So we know that Cynthia is bisexual, and her current partner is Lena. She's of course, and Ariana's brother's gay, and so she's very open that. But I think this could be. I don't think they would ever actually end up, because it seems to me it's almost like a one-weighted sided relationship. I think there's just a little bit of differences there in that, but they're definitely, Ariana is very, they both have this, again, mutual understanding of each other's life. And I think there's an openness to understanding each other.
Yeah. Well, especially, we see this in the characters as well. I mean, we look at Cynthia's South Node in Libra, then we see the conjunction of the Jupiter moon in Ariana's chart. That's very reminiscent of both of their personalities, just as actors, but also within their characters, because Elphaba almost has like, why are you so interested in all of this glamour and this ritz and this beauty? Been there, done that. Like, who needs that? Where for Ariana, that's everything. Again, we talked about that. These are one of the Libra placements are some of the few parts in Ariana's charts that are not really hidden within due to the retrogradation. And for Cynthia, it's almost like this effortless, I need to move past this. I'm not interested in this. So there's a very intriguing relationship where, they probably learned a lot about themselves through each other.
Well, here's the thing with Ketu, or the South Node in Libra. That means that's past life and disconnect. Like the relationship, been there, done that, like you're pointing out. I mean, she's done the relationship thing in past life, which is the South Node in Libra. In this life, she's supposed to work on self, the identification of self, and how she self-identifies with that in Aries. And I think the fact that the moon for Ariana is so close to Cynthia there, that there's some past life connection here, and again, emotional understanding at the core of the relationship.
What do you think, Simon?
Well, so I would like to talk a bit about that Mars-Nessus connection, because it is part of a grand Earth trine going on between them. And that involves Cynthia's moon. Cynthia being at a sunrise chart, the moon may very well be later, but it is still going to be in orb of a grand trine here. And her Neptune is definitely involved. And together they form a kite with Ariana's sun opposite that Neptune. And that is this combination that can give one massive stars in the eyes, okay? But at the same time, because it's the body of the kite is a grand Earth trine, it's still going to be practical. There is still a level of being down to earth despite the mystical, magical, glamorous, rumors of romanticism kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, excellent with regard to creative drive because of that Mars trine Neptune. So, yes, is there some trauma bonding that may be involved? Sure. And at the same time, there are very real things that can be deeply emotionally helpful to Cynthia in particular, and also Ariana with her sun at the head of that kite is like, being buoyed up, pushed upward, okay, in terms of her core sense of self and what her mission in life is, okay, and what her work is. This relationship has been incredibly useful to her, simply in terms of, the fame brought on by this movie on top of her other fame. So I think that, this is There's some lovely connections here. Again, I agree with Justin. I don't think this ever would go into an actual romantic relationship between the two of them. But I do think it's wonderful for them in terms of inspiring and motivating them. Note that Ariana's Mercury trine Cynthia's Mars. That's a great combination. Again, those motivating factors are there, which I really like for them.
Yeah, it's almost like a two-person covenship, if that makes sense.
I want to touch on you really hit on something, Simon, with the Mars Nessus thing, because if you look at Cynthia's chart, this concept of how she plays archetypes always comes back to that 29 degrees, the energetic degree of Mars there in Pisces, right? We know Pisces is that energy, which is about sacrificing oneself for something greater. And so it's interesting that if you look at, if we talk about the movie here and their characters, interaction with one another, it's I guess we could see where her playing this archetype, the Mars is her archetype, or the one witch, and for some reason she taps into, or could tap into, the trauma that the other witch has, that Ariana played. So there's this so what happens is there's this interplay between trauma and the archetype of trauma, and Cynthia's playing the archetypal role, but the trauma is coming in from Ariana actually here. And looking at this, I would be interested in seeing in the future, or looking in the past, like when she played in Color Purple, if we look at the other actors that she interacted with, what touches that Mars, that archetype? Because I think that points to her relationship with the other actors as she plays that archetypal role. It's really Mars, and then so there's something about that she's supposed to bring out the trauma of the archetype, the hero or the anti-hero here, and that's what we saw in the movie. There's this whole trauma effect, and she plays that role of the archetype of for this movie, the archetype of trauma.
Yeah. And we're talking about Virgo here. We're talking about, Mars in Virgo is very much a rule follower, and Nessus there in, I think her sister's name is Nessa in the movie.
Right.
It's the trauma of not following the rules and what happens when you don't, and how things can fall on you when it doesn't happen. So that plays out perfectly with what you're saying.
So let me kind of restate what I was saying, because it's actually we see the Mars, and it's actually Ariana's Mars here is on the other Nessa. But what we always see in astrology is you got to look at the other planet. Mm-hmm. So it's that Mars in Pisces down there that's triggering that, bringing out the archetype of the trauma of the heroes and the anti-heroes here.
Yeah.
Well, this does actually go back to what you were originally saying, though, with regard to Cynthia's Mars, because if you look closely, Ariana's Mars is tightly sextile her own Nessus, which we mentioned was at her midheaven, and together those two are pointing. They both have relationships with that Mars, right? Yeah. With Cynthia's Mars. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a quincunx from Ariana Nessus to that Mars. Yeah.
With everything you guys are saying, I mean,
so it's forming a yod.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. That's exactly what I was going to say. It feels like it's almost like a magical relationship that they have with each other that's faded above everything else. Like it's transcending just the things that they would approach in their normal lives, and getting to that kind of transcendent level – where there is really magic made. and I mean, I watched the movies. I would agree with that. But it's interesting that the movie is about magic and the use of magic, and they have this magical relationship, but there's also all these with that yod you just pointed out. This is a turning point for both of them. This experience was a point of change for both of their lives, and then we get back to that quote from the very beginning. I have now been changed for good. We should just write that in the yod.
Right.
Also, note that Mars of Cynthia's. Remember, I said that it trines Mercury. It also, or Ariana's Mercury, it also trines Ariana's Pluto. And so once again, we have a regenerative Plutonian trine. So we've got effectively, mirrored interactions going on where Pluto is a regenerative, the other person's Pluto is a regenerative factor for each person in this relationship. So that is deeply powerful. And since it's Pluto in Scorpio, it also digs into that, dives into magic.
Yeah.
I might also point out one thing is that, and it's not as deep, but it's definitely just sort of as a general thing. But their suns are opposite signs, and that is simpatico on its own level. Having Cancer Capricorn is a simpatico thing.
With mature people, the opposition is all about integration, and these are two people who want to succeed and do well in life, and have been through many relationships at this point in their life. You often see that opposition being a problem before the first Saturn return, but after that, it tends to be something like, I can learn from you, you can learn from me. Let's figure out the best way to integrate this energy and move forward.
Yep.
Especially with Cynthia's sun at Ariana's ascendant and conjoined by that generational pairing from Ariana's, Uranus Neptune. So speaking as a Capricorn, anytime that generational pairing hits my sun, when I feel it in synastry with other people, it's like zing. Okay. And so I can totally see that sense of oh my goodness, yes, this person who is, of this later generation, nonetheless, is lighting me up on that level, in terms of my sun. And in Ariana's case, that sun is literally lighting up her ascendant. Sometimes one person's sun and another's ascendant, the other person can feel like they're overshadowed in some way, right? But in this case, I feel like there's so much inspiration here that is helping Ariana to feel seen. And again, we go back to, where is her wounding? It's around feeling seen. So.
Yeah, and with all these interactions as well, I mean, just at a very basic core level, I mean, Ariana has a lot of planets in retrograde. It's turned inward. Cynthia does not have nearly as much going on in retrograde. All of these things are able to express themselves. So it's just, there's a lot of that kind of magical push and pull that allows them to really grow with each other.
Any other comments before we move on to the next chart? Okay. I do. That's okay.
You're right. There you go. The composite.
Okay, so we're going to look at the composite chart with them. So, Robert, do you want to start?
Well, I mean, let's just look at the ascendant. I mean, we're back to this Capricorn, and the ruler of the chart is directly on the ascendant. I mean, this is hard work ethic, ambitious, witness consciousness. They know what together. They know what people are going to want to see. They know how to deliver, and it's just to me it's just beautiful. Capricornian energy. And then, I mean, let's look at the descendant. What's right there? A moon in Cancer. They nourish each other. but they also help each other heal. These are, I think this goes back to what we were saying about, like, I don't think that Cynthia is somebody who's necessarily lets a lot of people in to a deep level based on her chart. And, this wound of feeling emotionally nourished in the composite when they're together, it seems like everything comes together in the composite for them. The hard work ethic that is, core to who they are in both of their charts, but also the nourishment that they may not necessarily receive, comes into focus when they are working together.
Yeah, I think the main thing the only thing I would say about this chart that really jumps out to me is that Moon Chiron Hygeia sequence there, knowing that in Ariana's chart she's got the Chiron and Hygeia in Leo, so there's that's about creative self-expression and helping work through one's issues there. And then of course we see Cynthia's got the conjunction in Gemini, which is being heard and communications, and the fact that it in the composite chart it comes together here in Cancer with that moon. I think it really shows that as a relationship together they can help heal people's emotions, and I think that's what probably comes through in the movie, that they're really working through each other's trauma, each other's family issues. We know they both got some similar things with parental stuff going on in their family, so they're really here as a relationship together. They can help heal people's emotions.
It's a very tidal relationship, just like Cancer as well. It moves in and it moves out. And, that happens in the story of Wicked. And I'm sure that it happens within their personal relationship as well. Maybe some issues of, getting nourished, but not knowing how to process that nourishment, pushing back a little bit, then coming in, that kind of push and pull, that tidal nature that Cancer can have. I mean, literally Glinda floats around on a bubble, like it's like that kind of cosmic egg that Cancer has where it lets certain things in and keeps certain things out. So I could see that being in play within their personal lives, which would also facilitate them because they both have Pluto in Scorpio, very intense. They're both at the top of their charts. Like this could, when Scorpio and Cancer play together, I understand it's a trine relationship, but at the same time, it can be extraordinarily intense and extraordinarily shifting.
Yeah.
Simon, would you like to comment?
So, a few things. Note again, Pluto. Pluto trine, and it's Pluto trine the moon. Okay, so powerful feelings, powerful emotions, okay, but also regenerative. And right up there at the top of the chart, then the impact of their personal, both working relationship and friendship, then, goes out to the public in this massively powerful way. Also note, Eris with the sun and squaring that moon as part of a cardinal grand cross that is in this chart, which again contributes to that tidal nature, that in out, that constant movement, right? And where is that? The sun, it's down in the second house, but that Eris in the third, where we communicate. And Eris being that disruptor, but also that advocate, okay, for those who are misunderstood or who are oppressed. And so the communication between them is communicating to the public in a way that's super powerful and also helps the misfits feel seen and understood.
Yeah. Yep. Yes.
Yep. I don't know. I think it's not lost on either of you. Juna's at 0 degrees Scorpio and Eros is at 0 degrees Pisces. That trine there is pretty powerful, I think. And I think Simon mentioned this. I think with Pluto on the midheaven, and then of course the moon and Chiron, I think Robert mentioned that it's on the ascendant. I think they're in this lifetime they're completing something. with a relationship here. They're completing something. And I think it's very auspicious with the Eros at 0 degrees Pisces, trining the 0 degrees Scorpio. And I know that 0 degrees Scorpio, which is very much intense, that, you know, it's like, and of course, the same thing with the 0 degrees Pisces. I think so. That's really auspicious. And then to the Sun, Eris, I think they both are playing very strong female roles. I think this really shows their individuality as strong female roles.
Yeah, and Ariana was 100% a bigger star coming into this. As far as just notoriety, people knowing, you know, who they are on the kitchen table. And, you know, remember that Cynthia has that Aries North Node. Well, where's the Sun? The Sun's in Aries. So this relationship was very helpful to Cynthia as far as helping her individuate herself within, you know, the collective consciousness. Whereas she was, you know, certainly not any lesser, but she was seen by a smaller audience, you know, usually with her roles on Broadway. When she came out with this was her first big role in a blockbuster movie. For Ariana Grande, I mean, she's been everywhere 100 times already. You know, people know who she is. This really helped, I think, Cynthia get to what she would feel like as her artistic destiny.
And you know, I think it changed Ariana, though. It really put her in a different light. This wasn't a type of role that she'd played before, and so I think this was actually changed her in a way. So she was helped in the way that it showed her in a different light than the way a lot of other people had seen her before.
One of the things that I like to do when I'm looking at a composite chart is to see where does it hit the natal charts. And remember, I pointed out with Cynthia's chart how many things are at the center of each sign. And so we've got these mid-sign connections over and over and over again hitting Cynthia's chart coming from the composite here. So it speaks to what Robert was saying about the profound effect of this relationship and this role on Cynthia.
Yeah, look at Ceres is at 16, Eris is at 16, Mars is at 16, Hygeia is at 16, and and Pluto's at 16 degrees.
Yeah.
To your point there.
I don't think this will be the last time they work together. You know, especially when we see a lot of that second deck in action. It's still kind of a work in progress in that second deck in a lot of times. You know, and, you know, if we get really back, just what does this relationship do from a fundamental standpoint? I mean, when we see the North Node and, you know, Ceres in Aquarius in the first house, it nurtures the collective. It's good for the collective. It's something that, you know, inspired a lot of people. It brought people together, you know, and it's kind of it was a cultural phenomenon for the collective, which is great. I mean, you know, but there are some hidden things within this relationship that we don't know about with that. Look at all that activity. When we see the, you know, Jupiter and Uranus playing together, I mean, I'm sure, you know, there are facts of omission at play here as into the depths of what this relationship was actually up to that I don't think we'll ever know. But I think that first house is really, you know, indicative of what the relationship was able to produce. I mean, it was able to produce a cultural phenomenon, and I think that's awesome.
Anything more?
Yeah, you know, I was just thinking about one thing, just one last thing I would share about their relationship. And back to what your original question was about all that Leo and Hygeia and Chiron in the 7th house. I think Ariana learned how to share the stage here a little bit.
Yes.
You know, with Cynthia. I think Ariana learned how to share the stage.
And that's speaking on the artistry of the work as well, because when we looked at the original Broadway cast, it did that as well. I think that because these roles are so iconic now and so powerful, and they are so different, but they're both amazing. There's certainly, it's not a 1A, 1B situation with these leads. They are absolutely, you know, both top tier in terms of the responsibility on the performer. And, and that is absolutely a great point. Like, I think this piece itself as a work of art really does do that for two people that are at the top of their game.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the Davison chart between them. Robert, you want to start?
Well, I mean, I looked at this, and when I look at the Davison chart, I'm looking at the sixth house here with what's going on with that Cancer there. That's really where it's at. The moon has moved away a little bit in the Davison chart, and it's more about like that tidal relationship on a day-to-day basis, and how that works, and making sure that they feel like they're nourishing each other. Ceres is there as well. I mean, we've got all the there's a lot of nourishment going on in the sixth house, and I'm sure that's what they did for each other on the set on a day-to-day basis, was they gave each other that kind of like that nurture that only they could give each other, especially because that Saturn still remains on that ascendant over there. This was hard work. They value hard work together. They understand the journey to the climb to the top of the mountain, and they need somebody there to kind of get them through on a day-to-day basis. And with the Ceres, the Jupiter, and the Chiron there, I absolutely just, that's really the only thing I have to say about it, is that this was a fantastic way for them to integrate the work-life balance was through their relationship with each other.
That Saturn's presence also speaks to the longevity of the relationship, the likelihood that this will be a lifelong friendship that continues, and that if they're able to do more work together, I'm sure they would love to do it because of that.
Yeah, I think to Robert's point, I think there are some hidden things though in their relationship. I think it jumps out to me on this chart is then the Hygeia moves to the 0-1 degree Pisces, where we saw Eros in the last one. So there's something there. And then of course Juno moves to the Pluto in Scorpio. So it's definitely a relationship that's going to change over time. And I think because that's in that 10th house there still, that I think they'll work together again, but it'll be probably different. Their relationship will be different. We'll see it as different in some ways. And I think their relationship together here has changed their careers.
And going back to that yod that Simon brought up, I mean, I think that is inevitable, is that this role changed them both. And when they come back together, they're not going to be coming back together as the same people were when they left it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And, that here we've got a grand water trine going on with that Eros, Moon, Pluto, and Juno. This is going to be a relationship that continues to emotionally nourish them, right? With public consequences. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I think the Mars on the North Node, I think it just backs up what you both have been saying there as far as the continuance of the communication of the relationship and working together in some ways.
I don't remember the Chiron degree in the Leo for Ariana, but that South Node being there,
it was 21 degrees. It was 21 degrees.
It's in the same general vicinity, and I think that really could this may have released Ariana a little bit, this relationship. You're ready to move past this wound now. In the seventh house, through that nurturing that we're seeing, really literally on the descendant. And that really is the nature of the Cancer to Leo relationship. It's the mother and the child in a lot of ways. So I do think that this relationship, the vertex is there as well. I mean, the Chiron's essentially at the midpoint between the South Node and the vertex of the Davison chart. This was a relationship of consequence, and it probably did release a little bit of Ariana's relationship concerns or issues. And we haven't heard much about Ariana's relationships as much since this role. I mean, usually it was constantly on TMZ, and she's dating this person. I wouldn't be surprised if Cynthia said, "I love you, girl, but maybe you need to be on the front page of TMZ a little bit less with the men." Like I could see that, What do you guys think about that?
That may well be. Note also that we've got that in this chart. We've got that sun trine that south node.
Mm-hmm.
And, and hanging out with our eras and our psyche fairly closely.
Mm-hmm.
Mercury in this chart then also trines that Chiron that you were talking about. So again, it speaks to literally that ability to speak directly, swiftly, and honestly.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hallmark of that Mercury in Aries. Okay.
Yeah.
To address
Yeah.
that old wounding. So again, I mean, there's just so many lovely connections and combinations between these two.
And a lot of them are subtle but powerful.
Yeah.
To the parent-child thing going on, this is the last thing I'd say about this. That moon opposite Saturn there, to me really speaks to the parent-child, mother-father aspect. Serious relationship, but definitely I think that maybe when they're together, one plays a little bit more of the parental role, one more of the child role here.
And its title, I think those roles shift. I think they switch up who's doing what.
Yep.
Yeah, Moon Saturn opposition there. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Cosmic Connections team. This has been wonderful. I so appreciate you all joining me, Justin, Robert, and Madam Simon. I want to thank our audience for watching today and those that come back at watch at a future date. And we're going to go to Robert's slide and he'll share about that.
Yeah, I am also on the Turning Season with Linda Berry. That is a vibrational astrology podcast. We talk, we meet at the solstices and the equinoxes to talk about what's coming up. Justin and I do U.S. global currents. We haven't done it in a little while because things got a little hot, but we will eventually get back to that. I am the director of the Magis Gathering. It is a Druid gathering. It's happening in Gore, Virginia this year. We are full. And then Fractal Cosmos. We had our first vibrational astrology conference last year. It was the first one in existence, and that we are doing it again this year in November. So please check it out, fractalcosmos.org.
Thank you. Simon?
So I can be found on Patreon, where I write about the astrological transits, and I do artwork that is based in them, as well as custom astrological art for my patrons. I also am a consulting astrologer, like all of the rest of the crew. So if you'd like to schedule a consultation with me, you can visit me at my website at iconalchemy.com.
Justin?
Yeah, best way to get a hold of me is through my email at justin.lz@gmail.com, also a consulting astrologer. And you can also find me through my YouTube channel at Astrological Yogi. And if you're interested in reading a weekly horoscope, I write a weekly horoscope for the Port Townsend Leader newspaper, and you can find that online.
And like everybody said, we're all consulting astrologers. We have newsletters and YouTube channels. So contact whoever you might want to contact. I'm going to appreciate that. We almost have 200 shows in the archives now. So that's really, there's 1 to 2 shows upcoming each week. So we look forward to the audience joining us and all of you too. And we're going to sign off and say goodbye for now. So it was good seeing you all. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next time.